Hey everyone. Alright, in this video we're going to introduce you to Wesley's rig. Now, down at the bottom we have our setup just like we did before. You can rotate it, move it, orient it any way you want, and the character will follow along with it. In addition to that, we have some new controls for the feet. We have a panel. The panel is what you want to animate your foot placement with, and so you can put it wherever you want, roll it left and right. However, if you go over to the modify panel with the panel selected, you also can raise the toes, drop the toes, or you can raise the heel or drop the heel. And so this is to give you a little bit more control over how the object works. Additionally, you still have the knee up here in front. Now, this knee position operates a little bit differently, but it will solve itself for the correct location most of the time. So, for example, if I move this knee all the way back, notice how the leg completely flipped on itself. It's not what we want. However, if I actually take this panel and adjust it to how it should be, leaning back like this, you can see that the knee comes up in front, and we're now in really good shape. Okay, but you can always move it left and right if you want. Alright, so in addition to the feet, we have our hips. Now our hips have two rings, an inner ring and an outer ring. The outer ring controls the overall midsection. So that's basically like you took this character by the belt and just started whipping them around. Okay? Now, the inner ring is intended to be used with rotation, and this allows you to get very subtle swaying in the hips. So, for example, if the character is just standing there, you may want to just keep this moving, just to get a little bit of movement and to keep it alive. Alright, now moving up from there, we have the spine. Now the spine was an interesting one, and that was one that basically can take so many different directions. And many of the solutions I was playing with were a little too free-form, meaning that it was very difficult to preserve the character because you could pull this part way up, this part way to the left, and the rig would follow that shape. What we want to do is we want to preserve Wesley. We don't want to stretch him. We don't want to skew him, distort him in any real way. We just want him to animate. And we also want to make sure that you as animators can get back to where you started. So what we have here is we have kind of like a hybrid system. There is still no squash and stretch, but you have this gizmo in the back. That gizmo is intended to be overall rotation. So as you can see, he arcs forward, arcs back, or can twist left and right, or shift left and right. Now in addition to this, so say for example, I want the character leaning over a little bit more than what we have. In the back here, we have some exposed bones, and each one of these can be manipulated so we can have even greater control. So for example, say I wanted the character to lean forward and arch her back. I can arch her back, take this bottom bone, and then lean them forward to get the pose that I want. And that holds true all the way up the spine. Now these bones in the spine are hierarchical. So if you're on one of these, say the base, and you do page down, notice how I'm moving up the spine. If I hit page up, I'm moving back in the other direction. So you can very quickly kind of pose your character just by using these hotkeys. At the very top of the spine, you have this little nub. And this little nub is intended to be kind of an isolated top rotation. So this is intended to kind of lock your shoulders, and kind of sway them left and right, twist them a little bit, and just generally play with them. You can only move in a couple directions. Those have intentionally been limited. Now, however, if, say for example, you want to shrug the shoulders, you have these two controls which are, you can move up and down. From there, we have the hand controls. Now, the hand is always in world space. As you saw when I was moving everything around, these hands pretty much stayed where they were. So if you're moving the hips or you're moving the whole body separate from this controller at the bottom, make sure to grab the hands. Alright, so here we can move the hands down in space. Can rotate them around. Now, one thing that's going on here is this part of the rig was giving me a lot of trouble. And so what we have is we have what's referred to as manual twisting wrist control. Okay, so when you rotate your wrist is actually very close to a hinge joint. And however, when you rotate it, or twist it, so you're looking at the top of your hand and then the palm, you'll notice that that rotation transfers all the way up your forearm. And the way that we handle this is with this little controller right at the wrist. So for example, say I take the hand and I twist it like this. Now, with this sort of clothing, it's not very obvious, and it may not even be an issue. However, if I take that little nub and rotate that too, we can get some fine adjustments going all the way down to the elbow. So it's just a way to avoid some pinching and other potential issues. Alright, so let's just get this back and let's zoom in on it. Alright, now from here you have your fingers, and I actually need to expose the bones here. So everything is on individual layers, and these individual finger bones will be placed on the proper layers. So here you can see many of the layers come in. Now, if you grab one of these controllers, it just moves or rotates the entire finger. If you double click on it and rotate, it does the same thing. However, at the very top of the screen, next to our coordinate system, if you go and click on the first option in that little menu, rotating it will curve them in. And then each one of these bones are also, much like the spine, are in a hierarchy. So we can use them to just kind of bring our fingers in however we want. Okay, so no digit manager or anything really cool like that, but hopefully the hand is robust and solid. One thing to watch out for is do not rotate this in other directions. As you can see, it's going to screw up. I'm going to try to limit all these just know what the limits are and try not to break the rig. Alright, so we have our elbows, much like before. Nothing really new there. Okay, so now let's move up to the head. Now with the head, what we have is we have a head controller. You do not use the bones, you use these control objects. So this allows us to rotate left and right, up and down, all around. Now on another layer are all the controls for the face. I tried to get a lot of these onto the head, but found that it just got too cluttered. You couldn't even see what the expression was, and it was just more trouble than it's worth. So what we have is we have a lot of these controls off to the side. Now we also have a camera here that's locked on the character's face. Okay, so independent of how you move the character's head, where it is in space, you can see that that camera is always locked on the character's face, making it easier to basically work on the facial expressions. Now, of course, you can always do it right in the viewport as well. Whatever viewport you're working on, it's your choice. Alright, so everything is labeled here, and generally these are all used with the move tool. I'll also show you a couple tools that I've used to kind of make it a little bit easier. Alright, so you want to select individual objects. This, for example, is the jaw, and we can move this around. So there is our jaw movement. And if you set your coordinate system to local, you'll hide many of the axes that you're not allowed to work in. So for example, the smirk or the frown, we can bring it up or bring it down. And it hides all the other axes so you know which direction you move in. So if I move that up, move the other one up, we get kind of a goofy smile. But I can still move the jaw independently. I can also do the same for frowning, grumbling sort of look. And because these are just objects, you can grab both of them at the same time and kind of speed up your workflow. Now, say for example, you want these to be back to where they were. You can select all three of them or just one of them. Right click. It's gone. Let me add it really quick. One sec. Okay, so what you can do, and I'll show everyone how to do this in class. You right click. Notice how there's a couple options here. One, we have quick switches from local coordinates to world coordinates. Sometimes some of these gizmos are better to work with in local, sometimes it's better to work with in world. So for example, positioning the hands, because they're always in world space, are good to set up with world. The other ones like rotations and so forth, good with local. But down here we have align and quick align. If we do quick align and click on this little marker in the middle, it puts them all back to 0. Now we also have tilting left and right. This isn't very physically accurate, but it can give you some great little poses, especially if you introduce little smirks and so forth. Alright, now in addition to this, we have puffing the cheeks out. And again, this all works with the jawbone. We also have pucker. Now you'll notice that pucker, you have to be careful. However, we can put the lips just right or position the jaw just right and adjust things appropriately. Now, right now, the character does not have a turbo smooth on it. And some of these elements can be cleaned up. That's alright, it can be cleaned up in post or after you work with this, and you can just update your file and everything will update appropriately. Alright, so now moving on from there, we have the eyes. Now the eyes, we have these two little markers in the middle. Grab one, you move the left eye, grab the other, it's the right eye. You can grab both of them to kind of move them comfortably in the right directions or together. Now we also have the eyelids here, and so if we grab the eyelids, oops, let's just switch over to local. Alright, so we have these objects, and the top one's for the top, the bottom one's for the bottom. However, if you grab both of them, make sure you're in local coordinates, and you can make them blink quite easily. And of course, you can grab multiple objects and do them together. Now these have the same little nubs in the middle. So for this though, you'll probably want to do one at a time, because as you can see, it doesn't quite work like that. So there you go. Now we're back to default. Now in addition to that, we have brow controls. Now each one of these can be moved up or down. So this gives us a little bit of control for our individual, or for posing our brow. The nice thing about this is we can grab multiple objects, bring them up, bring them down, and just kind of set our poses quite easily. And so that's basically it. There's currently no controls for the tongue. There's also currently no controls for rotating the eyelids or tilting them to the side. But one thing that you may find interesting is the hair. So notice how the hair jiggles. This is an automatic process based on how fast the character's head is moving. So we don't have to worry about animating the hair at all. If the character's head moves, the hair will bounce around a little bit. Now here the movement is quite extreme, so you're getting a more extreme effect. However, we can tweak all these things once we start seeing what some of the animations are like. Alright, so that is basically the rig. Hopefully it works out well for you. Please let me know of any errors or problems or inconveniences. Thanks for watching.